She's been looking up and sort of researching all the people who have, all the credible people, scholars and people like you who have been actually talking about the movie.
Well, thank you for actually agreeing to meeting with me. Actually, I was quite surprised that you agreed to meet with me because I'm just a humble, just YouTuber. I'm just a humble creator. So I just
Yeah,
thought,
you're smart. You're smart and you understood my movie. So that's what counts to me.
okay,
And you're not a humble, I mean, you're humble, all right, but you're a scholar and you are highly intelligent and intuitive. And it's always a pleasure to talk to people like that, like Katie. She has a very intuitive understanding of my work, and the questions that she asks are always highly intelligent. So it's always a pleasure. So thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing for the film and you've done in the past. Truly grateful to you.
okay. Well, I think that we're just mirroring back at you your own greatness, to be honest, because I know you're thanking us quite a lot for our efforts towards the movie, but and how we're showing our appreciation. But truly, I just think that I called it your masterpiece, that this is your magnum opus, but I generally believe that this is a masterpiece in general as well. And
Thank you.
I feel like we're just showing this to you. We're just mirroring this back at you because this movie is just great in general, and I'm just recognizing that it is essentially, if you know what I mean.
Very kind of you to say that. Truly appreciate you. Truly appreciate what you're saying.
Honestly, I just think it's the truth, actually. So it's just really, to me, it's just really true. It was just quite interesting because I discovered Closet Land, well, pretty much like Katarina through Alan Rickman back in the days. And it was just very interesting because I became obsessed with Severus Snape, and so by association, because I was a teenager, I became obsessed with Alan Rickman, and I was scrolling through his the Wikipedia page and the filmography, and I just there were all of these regular titles and like Love Actually and just all these mainstream titles, if I may say. And I just in the middle of this, I see this movie, just this line saying "Closet Land," and I thought it just seemed somehow it just seemed so peculiar, and it's like immediately it just called out to me, and I saw it and I thought, this is strange, there's something here, I have to click. So I just I clicked on it, and I just first of all, usually when you read the synopsis, it doesn't really give you a good overview of the actual movie, but I just saw these few elements, like there was only a single set and it was a two cast movie, there were only two actors, and so I just thought, you know what, never mind, I'm gonna watch it. I watched it and I just felt like I was destined to watch this movie, essentially. That as long as it existed, I was going to discover it, if that makes sense. So, yeah. So, truly grateful for you to have actually created this movie, in fact.
Well, thank you. You must have seen it on YouTube then, correct?
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
This is
I'm
definitely
very
something.
glad whoever uploaded it onto YouTube did it because there's two or three uploads, and I'm very grateful because um, you know there is no digital release, which is what we are now trying to get going, right? Um, so it's individual grassroots efforts of people like yourself, of Katie, people getting the word out. That's ultimately going to get us the digital release. I think the time now is actually a little bit better for that because with all the streaming channels and there's many places. In the past, it just used to be Criterion, but now there's something called Shout Factory, which does good work. So there's quite a few venues that we can approach, to with a view to getting the film, a proper digital release, be it streaming or be it as a hard copy that is available for people to purchase. So I would be happy with either. It just needs to get out.
Yes, this is actually the next questions I wanted to ask you if her venture, her initiative is being taken seriously, if we can expect something essentially, because this is something that I mentioned to her very briefly, but you mentioned YouTube and we can watch the movie on YouTube, but the only other way to watch the movie is to pirate it, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just thought, is there no one? Well, first of all, it's kind of insulting towards you, but also, is there no one who minds maybe the financial side of this, of things? Do they not mind that they're potentially losing money over it? And just in general, it's
Well, at this point, for me, having created the film, right, the money is to me less important than getting the work out.
okay.
Uh, I believe the work needs to get out, be seen, and it has always spoken to young people. Most of the fan mail I get, and I get it to this day, 30 years after the film, I still get mail people reach out to me via social media or whatever, and they are invariably young people, people who are in this country, at least in the US, people who've gone to high school or who are in college, and it was shown in some professor's class, and they are reaching out to tell me how impactful this film has been, and that sort of thing. So as long as the movie's out, I, at this point, do not care about revenue, but I certainly do not expect any of the other people who may have to get involved in a digital release to feel that way. So what I want people who are in a position to give it a digital release to realize is that there is a market for this. There is an audience for it. It's not small. It's not a small audience. It's big because nobody's pushing the film. I mean, it's not like there's a huge star or whatever pushing the movie. No, this is purely word of mouth. This is purely one person seeing it and either writing about it, doing a blog about it, and convincing other people that they know on social media, you must see this film. And that is priceless. You can't buy that. It's just 100% the power of the film. So I'm hoping, that whoever will ultimately do the honors of, releasing this film sees that there is a huge market that is untapped, for the film. And it's a very authentic film. It has authentic emotions. There's nothing phony or fake about it. And that's from the script. The script is an authentic script. It's a dive into pain and healing and strength. And it's not Hollywoodizing it. It doesn't whitewash or sugarcoat anything. And I think people must be hungry for that. I know I would be,
Yes.
hungry for authentic emotion. So yeah, sorry, didn't mean to start this on a soapbox, on my soapbox.
No, I agree with you, actually. I agree with you completely. It's just, I do feel like it's unfair, in my opinion, because your movie, like I said, is really great. It's just absolutely incredible. And there are stories that have less psychological substance, that are less mature emotionally and psychologically, just that turn into massive blockbusters and that make it just infinitely bigger than Closet Land has. And it's kind of offensive to say, but it's true, and it shouldn't be. I feel like it just shouldn't be this way.
Even a lot of it is marketing, I mean, marketing is what gives something an initial boost. If people are told, oh, this is a work of great genius, it's a work of profound emotional depth. This is a favorite phrase that critics like to use, wickedly funny. This work is so dangerous. And you go and, and that may carry some audience for a couple of weeks or so, but inevitably the truth comes out. It is not for nothing that 30 years after its release, Closet Land still has a fan base. I mean, I bet you weren't even born when the film was made. Katie wasn't even born when the film was made. You know what I'm saying? But if you guys are finding it and resonating with it, you might have been led to the film because of an actor, because of Alan Rickman, but not all of Rickman's films have this sort of devoted, I mean, people watching it and writing then to the maker of the movie, the person who wrote and directed it. So I think that its time will come, and maybe its time is now. Let's see what happens.
Yes, that would be great if you could. I'm very happy.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, well, actually, following up on this question, I would like to ask, because I know that there are a lot of aspiring filmmakers and independent filmmakers out there who pretty much view getting into Hollywood as the holy grail, not just the holy grail of their career, but the holy grail of life. And it's just this massive, difficult to access kind of machine. And so I wanted to actually ask you, how did this, I guess, miracle happen? How did you manage to actually get this movie out? Was it difficult? Was it easy? How did this happen, essentially? How did you manage to be able to express this and put this out into the world?
Well, the story is rather ridiculous, okay? So I came to Los Angeles from Philadelphia. I had done my film school in Philadelphia. I'd gone to, to study film in Philadelphia. I came out to Los Angeles because really that's the seat of the business. And to be able to make it in a business, you've got to go where the business is situated, right? So I moved out to LA with my husband, and my husband was freshly graduated out of law school. And we both didn't have much money. He had a mountain of student debts to clear, bank loans and stuff that he had taken to put himself through law school. But he was getting besieged by a lot of, he got a job in a very big law firm in Los Angeles. And almost immediately he started to get all these credit card companies saying, hey, you can sign up for a credit card. You'll have a $40,000 line of credit. And back then, my breaking into Hollywood, now there's lots of independence and there's streamers and there's lots of opportunities for people to potentially get in. Back then, it wasn't so at all. It was pretty much a monolithic industry. And the tried and tested way of getting in to be a director was you have to faithfully write scripts and hopefully someone will pick up your script and get it made. And then after writing another 20, 30 scripts, if some of them make decent money or have a profile, then maybe, just maybe, somebody would let you direct it. And that seemed like a very terribly long journey. If the vision is fully in your head, why couldn't you be allowed to direct it? And there's an African-American filmmaker called Robert Townsend, an actor too, a very good filmmaker. And he did a movie. He'd done the movie a few years ago, actually, which David and I, my husband and I, had seen. It's called Hollywood Shuffle. And he essentially funded the film himself, or, he patched together the financing on his own, because he was an actor and he was always asked to play very stereotypical roles in Hollywood movies. If you're a black guy, you're either a pimp or a drug dealer. At least that used to be the stereotypes back then. And he wanted to say how insulting all of this was to him as a black actor and as a black person, period. So he made this movie, which was a good movie, and it exposed the stereotypes that people expect of black actors like him in Hollywood. And he funded it, I think, out of his credit cards or something like that, right? And so my husband got the idea, hey, why don't you, because he knows I always like artistic challenges. He said, why don't you set something in just one room with two actors and I'll fund it? $40,000 on a credit card should be able to fund a film with just two actors in a room. So that was really the genesis of Closet Land, I said, yeah, it could be anything. A room and two actors, it could be my dinner with Andre, with Andre, two men talking about art and culture and this, that, the other. Or you could go to some forbidden places, the physical limitation of one room and a simple set does not have to be an artistic or a spiritual limitation, what I'm saying? I felt that the more the physical aspect of the film was constrained, the freer the mind should be to explore, any theme. And an interrogation situation immediately suggested itself to me. And the script came together pretty quickly. Then one pivotal thing happened. I was starting to take the script around, almost immediately people gravitated towards it, but people gravitated towards it. And by people, I mean people in Hollywood. And I was doing all the cold calling and sending scripts out on my own. And what happened was many people wanted me to change it, obviously. They wanted to say, you're from India, why are you writing something that's metaphorical? Because my script was set in no particular country, no particular time. And they said, why don't you situate it in Delhi or Mumbai? So that way they could neatly package it off into a third world gulag, right? And that was precisely what I was trying to fight. Because this is not about any real gulag, it's about the gulag of one's own mind. And the violence and abuse that exists in intimate relationships was as central, to Closet Land as the political abuse. Do you see what I'm saying? And by setting it in a third world gulag, what happens is the intimate abuse is conveniently forgotten. Everybody focuses on, these dirty third world countries and their dictatorships and their barbaric tyrannical rulers, and conveniently forget and completely dismiss the intimate abuse part of the whole script, which was pivotal to me. And I lucked out in two ways. Two important things happened to me. One is I entered the script literally last minute. I literally ran with the script. These were the days when you couldn't email things. You had to give a physical copy. I entered it into the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which is the body that gives the Oscars. They have it still continues to this day, a wonderful fellowship called the Nichols Screenwriting Fellowship. It is for amateur writers, people who haven't, in other words, made money writing screenplays. So I entered my script, it won. It was, they choose like 4 or 5 winners. Mine was one of the winners for that year. The other thing was I did a completely cold call to Oliver Stone's company. And to my great surprise, he called me back and said, send me the script. And I did, and he liked it. And so I was getting offers at that point from Hollywood. The minute I got the Nichols Screenwriting Fellowship, I started to get offers from Hollywood companies and independent production companies saying, hey, we'll do your film for you, but you have to get out. You can't direct this. And once they heard that Oliver Stone was a champion, they said, oh, let Oliver direct this, although he was completely fine. He wanted to support me and my vision. He wasn't saying, get away, I'll direct this. He was doing something completely generous and very supportive of a younger artist. And what he did was he was working at that point with Imagine Entertainment, Ron Howard's company, and he was doing The Doors with them, the film on the music group. And he had spoken to them. He said, there's a script that you should read. They read it, they liked it. And I said, will you permit me to direct this? Because that is a non-negotiable for me. And they said, absolutely, go ahead, do it. And Ron Howard and Brian Grazer were great. They, truly honored everything that they said to me. They, the film, they didn't, and they just let me make the movie. That's it. So, and once Ron Howard's company was interested and it was announced in all the trade papers, the trade publications, then actors began to, actors and their agencies began to approach me because the roles are great. I mean, an actor gets to dominate the screen for the entire movie. Who wouldn't want that, right? So there were a lot of opportunities. I met with a lot of really interesting actors who really responded to the script. And so that really is the story of Closetland. And I warned you, it's not going to be I didn't have a dramatic story like I had been imprisoned and, It
sounds like you actually got lucky in that case because there was some initial struggles, but then ultimately you actually did find people who understood, who just saw the vision and who believed in it and who were able to push it forward. So it sounds like things just aligned very well for this to work, essentially. It sounds
yes. In the beginning, yeah. Yes, it did. Getting to the finish line in terms of getting a green light, it was a struggle. It wasn't easy. And I had to hold on to my script and say, I'm not going to, because some very attractive and very lucrative offers came for me to just give the script and walk away and let somebody else direct it. And you have to say no to all of that. But so much of being, an artist in any form, be it music or dance or creating words, so much of it is really sticking to your vision. And, despite the temptations that come to take you away from your path, so that's part of any artist's journey. So I'm not asking for any special credit for having stuck to my guns.
I completely agree with you also regarding situating the work, because I think that if it had been taking place specifically, let's say in a third world country, for instance, or what is considered a third world country, then all the first world country audiences would have been able to pat themselves on the back saying, oh, well, this does not happen here in our country, no problem. And they would have been able to just pretend. Whereas in here, I actually felt like there was, probably because Alan Rickman is British, I kept thinking a lot about George Orwell's novel, because and I felt like I felt like the similarities were, it's relatable to everyone because of this. So this was a very good idea, making it as neutral as possible. And removing you from the screenwriting, I mean, to me, the reason why this movie is such a gem is because when I look at the credit, I see directed by Radha Bharadwaj and then written by Bharadwaj. And this is the only reason why it's such a good movie, is because you're the one with the vision and you're the one who was able to just be at the reins of this story. So I don't understand how an industry that wants to make money does not understand that it's precisely human brilliance that drives the money, because it drives people's feelings, and this is where people go. So therefore, that's where their wallets also follows. I can't understand why they don't understand this fundamental principle, because it could in fact make them richer, but they just don't seem to understand. So
yeah, I think in some ways a mass market industry which is so driven by money, you have to fight harder for your vision, right? Because they are not focused at all on, they may tell you your script is brilliant or whatever, but many of them were saying it only because a big director like Oliver Stone actually saw its worth. Very few people have the courage of their own independent convictions, Very few people actually even know what is good or bad. They're waiting for someone, be it a critic or be it a big actor, big director, someone to point the way and say, oh, okay, now it's safe for me now to come out and say, this is good. Which is why the people who actually greenlight you out of the strength of their own convictions deserve all the more credit. Oliver Stone deserves credit. Ron Howard and Brian Grazer deserve credit. They didn't look around and say, should we take a chance on her? They didn't do a poll. They just said, yeah, you look like you could, we could trust you with an opportunity. Go with it. So, and that's to me is a mark of somebody who is self-assured, but it's sort of rare to find in a business, especially in a business where there's so much money at play. Because Closetland is a small budget film, but still it was $2 million. It was, because I wasn't working with unknown actors and there were union, wages for the crew and stuff. So it was no longer a $40,000 movie that could be done on my husband's credit cards. It was a $2 million movie with a union crew and actors who, they were starting in their careers at that point, in their film careers, but they, had still, Madeleine Stowe had Revenge under her belt, and Alan Rickman, I think, was a big name in British stage and stuff, and he had done Die Hard, of course. So these were not like entirely nobody stage actors or people off the street that I could coach and educate and, put in a $30,000 movie. So, and I think the nature of the fact that it's there's big money that comes into play into making movies that automatically makes people skittish and afraid of taking risk and afraid to be daring. But the joke is, it's the real daring works that last, that stand the test of time, So hopefully there's a lesson for, the people greenlighting there.
Okay. I feel like it's less about being daring, but more about people have to be daring because they don't have the ability to recognize an opportunity when they see it. So they don't actually know, they can't predict that if a work is good and if it's going to make it. And because of it, they have to take a risk. It has to be a risk for them on their end because they can't actually tell, they can't actually see it. And I'm guessing, I guess my question here is, do people not have this sensor internally? Are they not able to recognize talent? Are they not able to recognize potential, let's say?
Good question. I would say less and less so. Anybody who's observing the trends of filmmaking will know that increasingly it's becoming a business of remakes. People would rather remake, at least in this country, at least I'm talking about Hollywood, right? In America. Mm-hmm. People would rather remake something that was done 40 years ago for the 15th time than take a chance on a new script. And that is why there's also a big push towards IP, intellectual property. In other words, original screenplays, no one cares, right? But if a screenplay is an adaptation of a book, even an utterly mediocre book, right? Or a book that hasn't even gone into print yet, but some publisher has put it in the galleys. Just the fact that somebody else has blessed it seems to give, film greenlighting agencies some confidence. Oh, so if it fails, we can blame them, If it fails, we can blame that guy. We don't have to take I don't know what is at work, but indie filmmakers like myself have observed this trend, and we will, many people with bigger voices than mine, with bigger reach than myself, have actually warned about this, that this sort of thing isn't going to end in good film anymore. Everybody's just doing derivative stuff. You're doing the 15th version of, I don't know, whatever, I mean,
take whatever, all the Disney movies.
Yeah, and even TV and stuff, it's the same thing. It's it's not that original material does not exist. It exists, but it's not getting made.
Yes.
So that, it's become more and more risk averse. And to answer your question, sadly, no. We need more leaders. We need less followers, in the filmmaking business right now.
Well, I guess that is the answer for aspiring filmmakers, sticking to their guns and pushing hard against adversity.
Yeah, and be active in multimedia. If everybody's running after IP, then create short stories, also create books. It's an artist has to be extremely nimble and extremely flexible.
I would like us to move now towards the movie itself, towards discussing the story itself. So I guess the first question on this topic is, one of the theories and the ideas that I put forward is that when an author or an artist creates fiction or a fictional world, the idea is that it's like an theoretical or hypothetical world. So obviously it's not real, but it exists only within their mind. And it's a little bit like, I'm guessing you've watched Inception, right? Where it's like a dream within a dream. And inside that world, the author outpour everything that is inside their mind. And typically what this ends up looking like is that this turns into what the mind wants the most. And so it uses this whole process that can be wish fulfillment or for a healing journey, but oftentimes even wish fulfillment ultimately hides the desire to actually heal and receive things that either have not been given or that are currently lacking. And I just feel like it's particularly relevant to Closetland because I know that a lot of critics focused on the political message and the political aspects of this, but I personally really feel as if the movie essentially is more about a sort of medium, essentially, for the protagonist. And I refuse, by the way, to call her a victim. This is the protagonist. That's it. This is how I'm going to refer to her. This is essentially her journey towards empowerment because essentially she felt so powerless, and she explains that she felt powerless. And this is about being able to retake her power. So this is sort of the interrogation, and all of the governmental aspects and the governmental oppression are mostly a setting for her to be able to do the things now in the present that she was not actually able to do as a child because she was too afraid to do it. And if she's ever going to be able to retake her power and stand up against oppression, then there needs to be oppression to stand up against. But this is obviously more easily done in fiction and not in the real world, which is why Closetland is fictional. And so I guess my question that I wanted to ask you was this a healing journey for you, writing this movie? Yes, I guess this question, yes. Was this a healing journey for you writing this movie? And also, what is it that inspired you to write it? Was there something personal in your life that inspired you to write this movie, essentially?
I'll answer, please don't lose sight of your questions, because I do want to answer one thing that you led your observation with, and it's a good observation. This whole thing of whether her wounded soul created this drama, so that she could dive into the pain and emerge strong, right? Whether that was my intention. Now, I know that some people have sort of read it that way, and once you create a work and release it out into the world, then people will have their interpretations of it, and it's quite fine with me. But I never intended it that way. That I intended it as a real nightmare situation. Nightmare in the sense, not like a dream nightmare, but like a hell, like a real hellish situation in which this person finds herself, and she is deprived of everything except the only thing she can fall back on is her own internal strength and her imagination to bail her out. And if she comes to grow to tremendous strength in the end. So the evil is external, the evil personified by the man, who's also wounded, but that's no excuse. There's a lot of walking wounded in our lives, and that's no excuse. The fact that you were wounded is no excuse for you to dish it out to other people, right? So I always felt that was a binary opposition in which the two of them had locked horns. I never intended it, or I never wrote it intending to be a sort of a hallucinatory experience in which she puts herself through this hell to come out strong. Believe me,
Actually, what I meant is was this the case for you? In fact, was this a story created by you, for your own healing journey, actually? And it translates into this character going through her own healing journey, but was this essentially maybe you as the author exposing yourself into the character? That's more what I was asking.
Well, one could also say, do I have elements of the interrogator in me, right? I mean, when you write fiction, you write heroes and you write villains, right? So to draw on heroes and to create villains, you draw on observations, experiences. And by experiences, I don't just mean lived experiences, but also things that you have read that affect you deeply. That all goes into a person's sort of creative canvas. It's like a palette of colors you have, right? And you dip your brush and you paint this and you paint that. No, it wasn't any healing journey for me, but I will tell you this. I have been, since I was pretty small, I have been sort of obsessed with the whole power dynamics, like how people and institutions. By institutions, it could even be a family, right? Or it could be a big political institution, or it could be a societal institution. How they seize power and they leave the individual completely powerless. And how does a person then assert oneself? Especially, I mean, I was small and I grew up in a, fairly, I wouldn't say strict, but there were certainly very rigid societal expectations when I was small. And, a lot of things that were very funny when I was small began to be really serious limitations when I was older. For instance, I found that I loved theater, I loved drama. So as a school child, I began to write, direct, and act in my own plays. All of that was fun and games. But once I said, this is what I want to do with my life, right? Not plays. I said I wanted to study filmmaking. Immediately the battle guns were drawn. No, you can't do that. You have to do a respectable career. You've got to go be a doctor, or you've got to be an engineer. How dare you? Only whores and hookers end up in the film business. Do you want to be that? All of this shit began to come out, right? So this is what I mean, that I need not necessarily have gone through sexual abuse, nor was I a victim of a prison state, because India was largely a democracy, even when I was growing up. And one had, as a citizen, certain freedoms. But the fact that those freedoms were arbitrary and someone could suddenly decide to take them away and leave you utterly powerless as an individual, my enormous sympathy for the individual human being, the individual thinking person, I think that has always been in me. And I think more than anything else, that was the root of Closetland. It's how do you then, when you're left with nothing, no way to place a call to an attorney, no way to get out, and there's this monster blocking every exit. How do you get out? You don't get out, you get in. You get into yourself. And that's where she ultimately finds, everything that she needs to triumph, really. So, yeah, it comes from, I suppose, an over identification and an over, not identification even, a real feeling for individual rights, the lone human individual, for their rights, right? I mean, I think that's the root of it. That's the root of Closetland.
All right. Okay, well, this is a good question, actually, because I wanted to ask you if there ever was something in your own personal life, if you had ever felt essentially as if something in your life had ever prevented you or stopped you from either following something that you felt was right, so some of your own more deeper or more inherent beliefs, I would say, or principles. And if something had ever prevented you actually from doing what you felt was right, essentially. So this is actually a good follow-up.
It was what was right, but what I wanted to do, I wanted to be a filmmaker, right? So that was, and I knew that pretty early on. And when I was 12 years old, I knew that that's what I wanted to do with my life. And then immediately the restrictions began to come down. But not only that, like there were criticisms as to the sort of stuff I could create. Why can't you just write something tame and like a romance or a comedy? Why are you delving into all these dark subject matters, right? I go where my nature leads me. It's not like I'm deliberately sitting there thinking, now how can I shame, my community? How are the many ways I can shame my community? I go where I'm led, right? So I think that was what I was trying to buck. And funnily enough, the same thing happened to me when I created Closetland, because many of the American critics who had such a huge problem with it, a lot of their criticisms actually were because I'm an Indian female. It's like, in fact, one critic had even written something like, this should have been set in a third world country, since the woman who wrote and directed herself is from the third world. So that's all I'm supposed to do. Just because I'm from the third world, I'm supposed to only create subject matters that would make you, Mr. White Liberal critic, feel comfortable in your own skin. Whereas they don't have any problems with someone like a David Lean or a Danny Boyle going to India and making movies about India. Why are they coming to India and making movies about my country? Why don't they stick to their first world, wonderful British scenarios? No one ever questions them. And I'm not questioning them either. They have the right to go anywhere and do any film, but the same right should be given to filmmakers from all over the world, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, religion, creed, color. But to us, it's always like you have to sit in that ghetto, right? And you have to do poverty porn or slum movies or, third world open defecation movies. That's the stuff I'm supposed to do. So in a funny way, everything that I was saying that I had experienced growing up in India, it was almost like there were a different set of bullies now telling me, you can't think this, you shouldn't write that, you shouldn't do this. Who gave you that right? I'm free. I can write what I want.
I think that they feel threatened, probably. And this is the reason why they want you to stay in your place, what they perceive to be your place, because they just feel threatened, and it challenges them to think and to reconsider the fact that they're not the king of the sandbox. They're just not.
Yeah, it is.
There are other people besides them on the planet, and they have to reconsider that they're not alone. And it scares them, I believe. It just makes them feel a bit challenged.
Yeah, completely spot on. But that was it. So yeah. Talking about the critics and, the same rigid expectations. If I got it on one end growing up from, my familial and, the societal situation in India, I experienced another version of the same sort of prudishness and narrow-mindedness from some, not all. There have been very wise minds on this movie from the beginning. And I want to give them due credit too. But, from some of those people,
just another side of it. Just another side of it.
Yeah.
It's very funny, actually, how much you've been hit by, dare I say, small minds, by smaller minds. I have a tendency to just dismiss these kinds of voices, but I can see how if that's too omnipresent, and if that's kind of maybe, let's say, 50% of what you receive, how difficult that can be to actually keep going. So I don't know how to say. It's very unpleasant, I guess.
It is, but more than the unpleasantness of it, is how it can actually thwart you. The fact that some prominent voices in the critical establishment came out against the movie in the US, the reception, incidentally, was different in Europe, because maybe in Europe there was more of an open-minded, people were less focused on my ethnicity and more focused on the work, which is the way it should be. I got a great write-up from Kahiye du Cinema. I don't think any of the British critics who saw it were anywhere as vitriolic as, what we got here out of from some people in the US. But what it does is it prevents, the reach of the movie is stopped. Because if a film has such poor ratings, right, who's going to go see it? And then that also automatically affects the kind of work I'm able to do. Because if a film is deemed not successful, then who the hell, it makes my next climb that much harder. It makes it that much harder to do work that is truly daring or original. All of that is made difficult. But, one thing is I don't whine. It is what it is. And if I've been given a bad deck of cards, I just play them to the best of my ability. What else can I do?
I'm sure there is something that can be done to help with this. I don't believe that you deserve to have. I do believe you deserve to have way more recognition than what you got. And actually, is this one of the reasons why you have not produced more movies? Because some filmmakers, they have a list of movies that's like that. And before you released Space Moms, it felt like there was Closetland as the biggest movie you had done. And I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the other one that you had made before.
Basil.
Right, there was this one.
Yeah.
And you do seem... it doesn't seem like you have made a lot of movies, actually, despite all of them being apparently so great. And it's just... Is this because of this? Is this why? Were you stopped from actually being able to produce more, or to create more? Or...
Well, in some extent, but I'd rather focus on stuff that I can do to correct. One tendency I have had is to be very obsessive about one work, you know what I'm saying? So when I create a script, 100% obsessed on it. So I had two projects in the past that I was 100% obsessed on trying to get it made. I wouldn't even think of creating something else. You can't be that way. It's a lesson I had to learn. It was a very painful lesson. My nature is to be brooding and sort of laser focused on one thing, right? But what I've had to learn is you can't be that way. Now I have like 4 or 5 scripts. I have, written some books as well that I'm trying to get. Again, the books are not what is typically expected of what someone like me should be writing. It's very, very different. So it's a lesson that I wouldn't have never it seemed alien to me to take my eye off that one thing, and while you're pushing that one thing, also create something else. That was a lesson. If I had learned that lesson, there would have been more movies. But I didn't learn that lesson. I had to learn it in my own time, in my own way, and I did. And so now I have multiple things going. The other thing was there were a couple of films which actually would have come together, but it was in very bad circumstances, meaning I felt that there was not enough respect for the material. I felt it would have been a fight every step of the way, which is what happened in my second film, Basil. I didn't want to ever be in a situation like that again. So I feel it's better to, not to do something rather than go in and have a piece of work ruined because you're working with the wrong sorts of people. So.
All right. Well, I look forward to it.
Thank you.
It'll be interesting. I didn't know that you also wrote books, actually. So that's nice.
Well, nothing's been published yet. I have had some short stories published. The book journey is rather new, but I did finish like 2 or 3 books. Had actually good agency representation from really good agents and stuff. But I'm looking for. I think the kind of agent that represents me has got to be, in a way, a bit unique, because I am not going to fall into whatever is expected of a third world female. I'm not going to be writing about Indian poverty. I may, but it will be in a different view. You're not going to like the view that I'm going to give you, right? You're not going to be safe with the view I'm going to give you. So, yeah.
You seem to actually put yourself against a lot of adversity because of your origin, your country of origin, and your ethnic group, actually. That seems a bit xenophobic, to say the least, actually.
It comes up a lot. I don't bring it up a lot, but it comes up a lot. It comes up in 2 ways. For instance, with Closet Land, it was like, people saying, why, one critic actually openly wrote, why isn't this movie set in India? The woman is from India, as if that's the only thing I should do. But sometimes I see also this stuff from Indians, like, when I did Basil, which is a movie about the Victorian class system, that's the one with Jared Leto and Christian Slater. India, oh, why aren't you making a movie about India? Why should I? Why can't I just make a movie about whatever the hell I want to make about, right? I am from India. That is a fact, but that can neither be a limitation nor it is something that I want to use to get special favors. Just like I was born in India, I was born female. I had no say over any of that. Not that I would change any of that. Everybody has to be born somewhere and has some history, right? But then afterwards, what we do with the opportunity of our birth and the opportunity of our education, our talents, it's 100% on us. Yes. And I can choose to set a movie in the future, where there's no one is, everybody is a color green or whatever. That's as far as my imagination will take me. But I feel that always people are trying to pin people and label people so that they put you in a safe little corner, then they don't have to deal with you.
Yeah.
I think that part of my existence and probably part of the stuff I create, I'm not doing it just to be difficult. It is the work I create. I'm not trying to be a rebel. It just is the work I create.
I don't think that being difficult or being a rebel, like, even seeing it this way in the first place, is from people who would want for you to not, I guess, leave the mold that they've forced upon you. Yes. So this is not you're just being yourself, essentially. They're only perceiving it as you being difficult because, oh, how dare you do this? It's just, no, this is very offensive. Yes. This is very offensive. Yeah. I'm insulted in your name, actually, so. Oh. All right, well.
No, you're 100% correct. It has to do with how safe other people are with where you go with your life, right? And I feel as long as I'm not harming anybody else, I'm not out there killing anybody or advocating for murder, why does it so bother you that I want to lead my life the way I want to lead? But that's something I've always encountered, even as I told you, as a child, from, horribly jealous relatives and stuff. And, just, and it takes a while for you to realize, oh, that came out of envy, or there was some fault in them that they were projecting onto you. Yes. It takes a while, for you to understand where those, barbs and those toxic comments come from.
Well, I really hope that you are able to go through this at some point and just rise above it and are able to create without these limitations, because this is highly offensive.
Yeah.
To go back to the question that I was asking, I think this was about the subject matter directly, about the movie itself directly. Okay, I wanted to ask you about some specific parts of the movie also. For instance, one scene that particularly interested me or that I thought was really, well, it was just really pretty shocking to see it there, I guess. So this is supposed to be an interrogation where the man breaks down the protagonist, or at least attempts to. And I just, so in some ways, I understand the movie could not be too excessive or too extreme. But one thing that I thought was interesting was that towards the end of the movie, after the moment where she finally confesses to what closet land really represents for her, I felt like the interrogation, in fact, shifted from being an interrogation to actually becoming more of a, again, more of a healing journey, but more of a therapy session, in fact, because he essentially tries to, he says, we must go back to closet land, and he tries to emulate this feeling precisely to get her to actually speak up this time around. And I just thought, I wanted to ask, why is this, why are those scenes present in the movie essentially? Because to me, this is not exactly what a government agent or a torturer or someone whose intention is to break you down. Why are those scenes there in the movie? Because that's not what I imagine someone who's trying to torture you would do to you, because this ultimately serves you and this helps you, this helps the protagonist, and this is technically designed to actually to help the person heal. So why are those scenes in the movie essentially? What was the...
Well, I think when it's a one-on-one, a torturer and his victim, right, an abuser and his victim, take it out of the parameters of state torture, political torture. Just put it in the context of any abuse, an abusive husband to a wife or an abusive wife to a husband, an abusive parent to a child, an abusive sibling to another sibling, an abusive teacher to the student, right? If it is a one-on-one situation, that relationship will have many colors in it. It won't stay on the one note of I'm constantly hitting you and you're constantly doing this. That relationship will have shades. The power equation will always be the same. Somebody's always on top, somebody's always on the bottom. But the sociopath abuser will have many cards they can play. This is why women who are abused tend to stay in abusive relationships because, oh, he beat me and he broke my legs, but he also sent me flowers. He bought me a diamond ring. You see, the sociopathic abuser has many cards they can play to keep you reeled and roped into the game.
Okay.
I felt that if a two-hander in one room had to succeed, if a two-hander in one room succeeds, it would be because a range of emotions had to be explored. It shouldn't always. It would never stay on the note of a constant abuse being rained down on this person. The end was cathartic for her because she connected the dots. She said, you're not just the state's abuser, you were also the person who tormented me. And there was a reason why I did that. You were also the person who abused me as a child, right? It was liberating for her, but in a way it was also liberating for him. In the same way that criminals oftentimes want to be caught. Police people always say that if you look at crime shows, this criminal, he might have committed 9 killings before, but he wanted to be caught before. That's why he started to leave clues and stuff, right? It's like the human soul cannot take the burden of deceit and sin for too long. At some point it breaks and it wants absolution. So it had to be cathartic for her. It also had to be cathartic for him. So if you take it outside the construct of just a political interrogation situation, you will understand why such moments of seeming connection, happen between the two of them, where there's a seeming bond, a seeming connection, where she seems to trust him, or she seems to say, oh, why don't you interrogate me? Don't let the other guy come in. And he blindfolds her, and of course he comes in as himself, but he changes his voice, right? Yeah. So it has to explore all those ranges of trust, repeated betrayal, repeated hopes being dashed, to finally then say there's no way out but within. She goes within, she finds the truth, and that truth gives her all sorts of courage.
So you're saying that essentially this was also part of his mind games that he was just playing, I guess, well, not to sound too reductive, but good cop, bad cop, essentially, that he was making sure that she could be dependent on her while gaining her trust. But so this was also just part of his games, essentially, to do this.
It was, but in the end, when when he says, now let's go to closet land, right? I've tried to break you, I can't break you. So he goes to the one place where he thinks she can be broken when she was a child. He tries to take her back to childhood. but she's not a child anymore, you know? I mean, she's a full-grown female. And yes, he's stronger because he's a male and, you know, he's physically much more strong than she is. But she has strengths that he cannot even hope to aspire to. She has strength within. And, you know, like in these high risk poker games that you play with other people, you don't know. He probably took her into the closet to break her, but she emerged stronger, way stronger, right? So it's a risk that he did not calculate how it would play.
Yes, actually, about the fact that the interrogator, I could never actually understand if he indeed was the man who had abused her in her childhood, if this was the same person, or if this was just a role that he was assuming because he thought that this would work best to actually get through to her. So which one is it? Which one was true, actually, if you wouldn't mind, you know, shedding
No,
some
I don't mind at all because that was the genesis of the idea for me. Once I decided two people, one room, and I'm not going to make it a cultural conversation, right? That I was going to go into some deep, dark places. One of the things that has always struck me, I realize this now, I'm able to articulate it now. Back then, when I wrote the piece, I had an instinctual feeling for it, but now I'm able to actually cerebrally look back and say, yes, I've always been struck by the similarity between abused children and the populace of a country where the government is like the abusive parent.
Yes.
There is a direct one-on-one similarity.
Yes.
And the psychopathology of the child and the citizenry, and the psychopathology of the abusive state and the child abuser.
Yes.
It's almost 1 = 1. It's almost same. You're taking the same mental, and that's why I said it's the same guy. The same guy did both. The same woman endured both. She endures state tyranny, but she also endured personal abuse. And that's why in the end she makes that speech about children are easy victims. Children are easy victims, and the populace of a country where the state becomes the abusive parent are also easy victims. Anyone can be pulled away for any reason under the sun, interrogated, tortured, you never hear from them again. And it is all accepted, just like children accept abuse, and abused citizenry will also accept abuse. So it's something that I've seen crystal clear. I cannot unsee it having seen it. And I wanted to put it out there as clearly as I could. And this work was one way to do it.
I'm really glad that you mentioned it because I actually wrote an article about this exactly, that parents who did not want to have children ended up neglecting those kids because they didn't want to have to fulfill them and fulfill their needs. So one way that they would find to avoid having to fulfill those needs would be to repress them under the threat of harm, essentially. And because the government essentially does the same thing, that it just tries to coerce you into obedience under the threat of harm. Yeah. People, when they grow up, they end up seeing the government in the same way, and they expect the government to take care of their needs while at the same time being afraid of it. And it's just, yeah, it's wonderful that you mentioned this because I remarked the same thing and noticed the same thing. So
exactly, you got it. That's exactly why. And that's exactly, in fact, it's funny because some people in the entertainment business who wanted to do this film, they wanted me to make it different. They said, don't make the same guy both. Why is the same guy both? I said, the same guy is both because it's not a realistic piece. It's a metaphorical piece. I'm not doing some documentary on some real life thing. This is a metaphorical piece in which actually words spoken and people are symbols of larger issues. That's the only way you understand a metaphor. You don't understand a metaphor by comparing it to your life and your grandmother's life.
The next question I wanted to ask, I guess, is a little bit lighter. It's not that big of a deal, I suppose. A lot of fans in the comments, they saw some of the torture scenes as a bit more arousing. I suppose it's strictly because Alan Rickman has got charisma. And I just wanted to ask you, what was your opinion on this, actually?
I take no responsibility for how people respond to my work. Okay. There was certainly no intention at all on my part to have pain be arousing, right?
Yes.
Pain is never arousing. It never is arousing to the victim, never. Yes. And if people, I will quote what she says in the script herself, a line I wrote for her, I put in her mouth. She says there are people who get turned on by passages in the Bible.
Yes.
That can't be brought to lay at my feet. If people are getting turned on by that, it's on them. Somewhere they've kind of crossed wires in their heads where they have started to accept pain and abuse as a form of love. And I would just tell those people it's very dangerous. Don't go there. Respect yourself. Love is love and abuse is abuse, and the twain should never meet.
Absolutely. Okay, so one of the ways that the movie was interpreted, like I said, by the critics, was that this was more of a political statement. And the way that I personally saw it was that this was more about the psychological substance and less about the political statement. But the way that you actually speak about it, it seems that obviously it's pretty much about both. But I wanted to ask you, essentially, is it strictly a political message, or is it more about the emotional baggage of the story?
It is a story. It's not a political message. I think the focus on that came because people didn't know what to make of the movie. It was unusual. It was different from everything they had ever seen. In the language of cinema, right? It was way ahead its time. They didn't know what to make of it. And also the fact that I was not some white guy, but this was an Indian female who wrote this. Okay, so it became easy to ridicule and to miss. I think the fact that the Amnesty International's quote and stuff was stuck on the film gave people an out, which I was dead opposed to, and I remain opposed to. I said I did not feel Amnesty or any group for that matter, no group should be endorsing or not endorsing a work of, fiction, a work of art, really, a creation. So I think the Amnesty quote on it became a way for people who didn't understand the film to immediately just push it into that thing. Oh, it's a political movie. It's a propaganda movie. It's Amnesty propaganda. No, and this is exactly why I said, don't put any Amnesty. It was done. I do not approve of that quote being there. Never did, never do to this day.
Okay, so wait a minute. This quote was not there because you wanted it to be there. This was not your intention.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Really?
not.
Oh.
I was opposed to it, 100% opposed to it, and that's why I put the stupid Gandhi quote there because I said if you just leave the Amnesty thing hanging there, the whole movie will be dismissed as Amnesty International propaganda. So let me stick something from Gandhi or someone, right? Some other Nelson Mandela, somebody. Let me just find some quote and stick it there. So to hopefully try and balance it out, but no, absolutely not. No Amnesty quote, In fact, that should be part of any re-release that is done. Take that out. It has no place in a fiction. It's deeply, it really, was something I never was for, never am for. Until my dying day, I'll say that was the wrong thing to do. You shouldn't do that.
Okay, this is very interesting actually, because that quote, in fact, really threw me the first time I watched the movie because I was so enthralled by the story, and I absolutely believed it was about, the healing journey, the retaking your power, etc., etc. And then suddenly I see this quote, and I absolutely believed to me that the government aspects were just a conduit to tell the story. And I just thought that it was just the setup. This was just the setting.
Such disservice has been done to this film. By sticking that quote. And I'll give you an example. I've got one of the projects that I do want to do. It's very dear to me because I'm an ethical vegan. I love animals. I don't want to hurt them at all. Is a movie about vivisection, right? And I want to do it as an animation. And I donate money to and I support a lot of animal organizations like PETA, Mercy for Animals. Yes. If they came and told me, hey, let's try and please stick a quote from us at the end of your film, I would say absolutely not. I'm willing to give you 100% of everything I earned from this film. I'm willing to do a premiere or two for you, so you can have the benefits, but you are not putting your brand on my work. My work came out of my head. No one has the right to it. No one, you didn't hire me to do this. So it's the same thing,
Were you actually forced essentially to add this quote? Was it obligated? Was it either this quote appears in the movie or the movie doesn't come out? Was it?
No, it wasn't. It didn't get there. It was just made very clear to me that it was for some marketing reason. They probably thought that this was. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, probably they thought I wasn't involved in any marketing decisions. I was the first-time rookie filmmaker. I made the movie, I brought it in on time, on budget, and, some marketing, reason perhaps, but they felt that this tie with Amnesty would be advantageous. Absolutely not.
Yeah, no,
I could have told that, but, it didn't go there. I mean, no one ever, but it just was made very clear to me that this was happening, this is happening, that's that.
Yeah, you were told that.
I beg your pardon?
You were told rather than asked.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Huh. Well, I do think that if there ever is a release of this movie again, either in DVD or Blu-ray or the digital version, yeah, I do think that the quote should go, A, because if you do not want this and you're opposed to it, then I don't see why it's there. But also because it's visible, it does not actually belong there, in fact. Because, like I said, when I watched it the first time around,
Yeah.
just I was enthralled by the story, by the movie, and then I saw the quote, and I was like, wait, so actually I have to consider this? It's like, I feel like it almost takes away from the actual meaning of the story, because the story is something and the movie communicates that very clearly all by itself. And even if some people are confused by it, that doesn't matter. People who can interpret movies are going to see it, so it's fine. The quote actually kind of leads you astray, I would say. So
yeah, no, spot on. And I remember because way back then, even Kathleen Murphy, who wrote for film, she's a film scholar, a film critic. She wrote a beautiful piece defending the film in the wake of the film's release in Film Comment, a magazine. And she actually even talked about that. She talked about the quote at the end. And I think another critic, who had liked the film, I forget if it was one of the New York critics who liked the film, actually also questioned that. See, that's what happened. People who liked the movie were irritated by the quote. People who didn't get the movie found the quote a convenient way to hang everything on it, to say, oh, this is just political propaganda. So I have been vindicated. Everything that I was saying back then, don't put this quote, it'll do enormous disservice to the film, has been proven by reactions of people like you, who love the film and then who felt like the quote, where's this coming from,
Absolutely.
So it's 100% a fiction film. It is my vision, my idea, 100% fiction. I didn't take anybody's life or, it's not based on any real event. So it should exist in that realm. People don't go around sticking quotes on, for instance, Quentin Tarantino's movies or, anyone. Take anyone else who's, writing fiction. You don't need it. Yes. So, yeah, I'm glad you asked that.
Yes. Even in his first two movies before he actually made it big with Kill Bill, they still wouldn't actually have done this. So yes, absolutely, I agree with you. You're right. Okay. Can I ask you, do you relate to the characters, to either the torturer or the protagonist? Do you relate to either of them or both of them?
They are my creations. So you have I don't know, relate is the word. I write about evil. I think it is important to look evil in the face and to recognize evil for what it is. It is very, very important. It is also important to recognize courage and heroism when one sees it in one's life, which is very rare, because there aren't that many heroes and there aren't that many principled or courageous people. But when you see it, acts of that, it is important too. As a fiction writer, when I write about people who are really utterly depraved and evil, people who are middling, and people who show real courage, real strength of conviction. I have relate is the wrong word for it, but they're all my creations. So I am like a parent who has one horrible child and one good child, but both are my children.
Yes.
I see them for what they are. I'm not an idiot parent. I actually have some brains. So I know that the good child is a good child and the rotten kid is a rotten kid and will come to no good end. But they are my children. Do you see what I'm saying? It's the same, probably, Do I suspend my own values when I create these things? No, I don't. I'm telling you right now, the guy is bad news. And the woman has had an awakening, and she shows great courage.
Right.
And there's no equal between them. They're not same. They're not. One is bad and one is redeemed by her courage, really.
I'm just going to ask you one last question and then we can probably wrap this up. Actually, what I wanted to talk to you about was not about Closet Land, but about Space Moms, because I watched the interview that you made with your husband and you mentioned, I believe the topic was women having to navigate between their professional lives and their personal lives as either moms or as wives. And the one comment that I wanted to make about this, actually, if I may, is that the only reason why there is this kind of conflict is because women have essentially been forced into the role of being the caretaker of the home, essentially. And you don't ever look at men this way and think, oh, they have to fight between, their job, their career, and the fact that they're a father or a husband or anything of the sort. And I just feel like if one were to step away from this kind of logic, then there would no longer be a conflict in the first place, because this conflict stems from this kind of archaic belief, essentially, this kind of false beliefs that this sort of role that was assigned onto women, falsely. And so there would not be a conflict in the first place if actually this belief was to be rejected. If it were to be rejected, then it would no longer be about how do I navigate the two of them. It would just be different aspects of your life that all come together, in your one life, I guess. It's just, it all merges together, I suppose.
Yeah. I think I probably said in an inelegant way exactly what you said, because Space Moms is about very ordinary, average, middle-class Indian women who have all the home responsibilities, and their husbands share them too. It's not just uniquely on their heads, but who also then have a very demanding job of launching, rockets into space. These are space scientists. And since many of them are married women with children and stuff, the juggling, right? Where do I give my most to? Which deserves importance? And how they do it becomes important. It is important in India, which is a traditional society, which may have certain expectations of women, right? But frankly, those expectations exist here too. It's not, it's the lot of women, I think. We are judged for every choice. If you're at work, you're made to feel guilty for not doing enough at home. If you're at home, your heart yearns for what you want to do professionally, because it's not just a profession, it's a calling for some of us, right? And so Space Moms addressed that because that was very much a part of the story. It was very much a part of the story how they juggled both worlds. Some did it well, some did it with bad grace, but they did it. And they didn't let the mission fail, the mission of sending the stuff to Mars. I think that's what I was talking about. You're right 100%. Their lot is hard. One would never, a man can coolly dump all his responsibilities onto the wife and keep launching rockets all day, and no one will bat a lid. In fact, he'll even get awards for it. But a woman will be held to account, A, for failing to launch that rocket, and B, if a kid goes and gets in trouble at school, it's all her fault. That's the way it goes.
Yeah. I would say the key to avoiding all of this is to reject this in the first place and not try to adhere to it by trying to juggle both of them, but just completely rejecting this in the first place instead of adhering to it. And that's ultimately the solution to escape this paradigm.
In Space Moms, actually, because I did interview some real life women scientists, I was very impressed with how some of them just did it with a light touch. I mean, they just did their best wherever they were. They focused on wherever they were there fully. You know what I'm saying? If they were at home, they were there fully. If they were at work, they were there fully. And actually, one of them said, that's how I succeed. Wherever I am there. I don't have guilt for forsaking any home responsibilities when I'm at work. Neither do I feel, that I have to shoulder all the work responsibilities when I'm at home. So that's, if you have that skill to inhabit a place fully, either as a male or a female, I think that's a key to a very successful life.
Okay.
And it takes a certain personality, which I certainly do not have, because I'm 100% about, my work, so yeah, some people have that skill and some people don't, so I think that in Space Moms, that was what I was trying to say, that how some women wore that very lightly, took the, responsibility, they sailed through it with very little emotional wear and tear.
So you're saying give your all and give 100% everywhere you are, and that way it doesn't feel like you have to be torn, split in half.
And also don't have guilt. That's the key thing. As I'm talking to you, I'm realizing the key thing is don't be guilty. If you're at work, you're bloody at work. Don't be guilty about the home. Yes. If you're at home, you're at home. Don't be guilty about, I've left all these responsibilities at work. You're working with a team. That's one thing also. They realize that there's teamwork, and It's not just one person carrying the whole mission on their heads. There's a whole team working on it. So some of them have to actually learn teamwork and to let it go. They're not the brightest thing in the room. There's other people also working on it. So I think don't feel so guilty. Don't hold yourself to ridiculous perfectionist standards, because they don't exist, not even in fiction, So why, yeah.
I think you are a creator, so if you are the sort of person who prefers to be 100% dedicated to your work, then please, by all means, do it. Just continue to bless us.
Exactly. And without guilt. And that's the key thing. Do it without guilt. That's who you are. Inhabit yourself without guilt.
Yeah, don't feel held back by other things, because if this is your calling, then it's your calling, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's pretty much it so far, I guess. I feel like maybe there are other things that we haven't touched on. For instance, I had no idea that this quote was not actually, that you didn't want it in the movie. So I don't know exactly what questions to ask to just probe and, figure out these, to just fish out these little anecdotes, essentially. So I'm not really sure how to formulate this, because I feel like maybe there are these little stories that we could discover, but I'm just not sure how to. Is there anything else that you can tell us about this, actually, about Closen Land in general?
Nothing, except that I'm delighted it continues to have, when all the horrible criticisms and stuff came in, I remember one very wise female, she's a professor at Columbia, teaches film, and she is very influential in the world of film scholarship and stuff. She told me, don't despair, there are ancillary markets, your film will find its audience. And I think about her all the time. I think whenever people like you reach out and, people like Katie and other people reach out about the film, how true she was, and how much her words were so healing to me at that point, gave me so much hope. But I'm just very grateful, really, that the film got made. I'm very grateful. Amnesty International quote notwithstanding, I'm glad the film got made, because we can take that out. The fact is, the animal exists, the dog exists. Let's not let the tail wag the dog, right? That's the quote. Let's forget that quote for a minute. But the film exists, and now we can get it. We have an opportunity to get it re-released. I'm excited at the possibility of that. I hope it inspires other people to break out of stereotypes and boxes, and to have the courage of their convictions and go get their movies made on their terms, and to not shy away from painful content, because forget the critics. Average people are very receptive. Average people don't give a shit. They don't come in saying, oh, Indian woman, she has to only talk about films. That's all coming from the gatekeeping establishment. Average people are just open to stories. They're open to authentic emotion. And average people have actually remained my mainstay. They give me a lot of strength. There's nothing at all average about them. They are quite extraordinary in their own way. And so trust in people, trust in people, and put your best work out. So that's, what I would have to say.
I can tell you that personally, having the meaning jumped out to me. So I was really shocked when you told me that there were critics who were as blind as this, that were just, that missed the point and so entirely. So yes, what this professor told you, that there would be people who would actually who would be able to receive the story and who would be able to understand it. To me, this is, like I said, this movie is a work of art, and anywhere I would have been in life, I would have found this movie, and I would have just connected with it, I guess, in a way.
So. Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, you've had your connection to it has been intuitive, and I didn't, not one of your takes has been wrong. So, okay. No, thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. I'm so enormously grateful and humbled, I'm very glad the movie gave me an opportunity to meet people like you, and it's deeply meaningful to me.
Well, I'm very grateful to you for making this story and for having had the ability to release it into the world. So
thank you, Phildy. So grateful to you.